Hey folks, in this video we're going to look at a technique called Travis picking, which is named after the legendary American folk and country guitarist called Merle Travis. It's sometimes referred to as claw hammer, but in fact that's technically a banjo technique. Somehow the two names got intertwined somewhere down along the line, but officially this pattern is referred to as Travis picking. So before we look at the technique itself, I want to talk firstly about the naming conventions of the right hand. We're going to use the Spanish or classical terminology where the thumb is P, that's pulgar or pulgar I think in Spanish. Index finger is I, that's indice. Medio or medio is your middle finger. Annular is your ring finger, that's A. And C is for the pinky. I don't actually know the Spanish name for that. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter because we're not going to use the A and C fingers. We're going to use P, I and M exclusively for this pattern, or thumb 1 and 2. Now, the pattern is based on this kind of perpetual motion of the thumb, which sort of works as the engine of the technique and keeps the sense of motion pushing the pattern forward all the time. The thumb plays what's called an alternating bass line. So whatever chord you happen to be playing, the thumb is going to bounce on alternate beats between alternate strings. So in this case, we're going to look at the chord of D. In our left hand, we're going to just play a simple D major chord. The lowest two notes in the chord of D major are the 4th string D and the 3rd string G. So our thumb is simply going to bounce between the D and G strings on each successive beat, hence alternating bass line, alternating from one string to the next. So it's going to move like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this is figure A on your sheet. So very, very simple, just setting up the kind of foundation of the pattern. If we move on to section B, figure B, we're going to add in one note here. We're going to add in the index finger on the 2nd string, the B string, just after the 2nd thumb, and it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3. Nice and simple so far. Figure C now adds in one further note. That's the middle finger on the 1st string coming up towards the end of the bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can really hear that nice sort of flowing sense of movement in the pattern already. And we have one more section to add on to complete the pattern. That's figure D, which is the full basic Travis pattern. That involves a pinch of the thumb and the middle finger on the 1 of the bar. On the very first beat of the bar, we add in this pinch like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's figure D, the basic Travis pattern. Now, this is endlessly variable. You can do all sorts of different picking styles and picking variations based off this kind of original pattern. Generally what tends to happen is the thumb will always stay the same. The thumb very rarely deviates from its alternating bass part. It's the index and middle fingers that tend to vary what they do around those fingers. One such variation is figure E, the roll, which is a very common variation. It's a little less complex. It involves just the 3 fingers that pick P for the thumb, the index in the middle, and it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, roll. Sorry, here we go. I was just enjoying listening to that pattern too much. So here's the roll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is P, M, P, I, P, M, P, I, P, M, P, I, P, M, P, I. Or if you prefer, thumb 2, thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 1. Or if you prefer, outside, inside, outside, inside. If we go back to the basic Travis pattern, sometimes you can think of that as pinch, inside, outside, thumb. Pinch, inside, outside, thumb. Referring to the sort of the position of the strings within the chord. Pinch, inside, outside, thumb. Changing back to the roll, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside. And there's your basic Travis technique, and one variation, the roll. You can apply that to any chord. At the very top of your page you have an example where I play the roll on a C chord, which goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then changes to a G, then C, then G. Notice how in the G chord the thumb actually skips over a string. We go from E to D, E to D. So all of that's allowed, and indeed very common. You can change up the strings that you play in this pattern. They don't always have to be those 4 adjacent ones. So you could play your C like this, for example. And G, C, G. As I said, endlessly variable and quite a straightforward technique when you break it down to its kind of basic component parts. I think it sounds a lot more complex than it actually is to play, and the beauty of it is it's as I said, incredibly variable. You can invent lots of different picking patterns based around that technique, and it's a really pretty sweet sounding sort of flowing technique that can really add a nice bit of kind of life and movement to lots of different songs. I've got a couple of follow-up videos in which I'm going to play some tunes that feature this technique, so keep an eye on the blog for those. But in the meantime, have fun building up that technique, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.